Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. Let's get started and look into our daily quiz. Before we start with the practice questions for the day, we have an announcement. Byju's Exam Prep IAS would be conducting an IAS offline workshop. This is scheduled to be conducted on 6th of November 2022. We will have a mock test between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m. followed by an IAS workshop between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. If you are in any of these cities, please to attend the workshop which will take place in Lucknow, followed by Hindi session in Delhi. Then we will have another session in Chennai, followed by the English session in New Delhi. Let's get started and look into the first practice question. Consider the following pairs. We have the dance on one side, the state it is practiced on the other side. Chari, Madhya Pradesh, Dimsa, Arunachal Pradesh, Padayani, Goa, Wangla, Meghalaya. How many pairs given above are correctly matched? The answer to this is only one pair. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to the Wangla dance. Let us try and understand what are these statements. When you look into the first statement speaks about Chari. What is Chari here? Chari happens to be one of the dance form. This is not from the state of Madhya Pradesh, but instead it is from the state of Rajasthan. So the first statement that is given here is wrongly matched. Then we have Dimsa. Dimsa is not practiced in the state of Arunachal Pradesh. Instead, it is practiced in the state of Andhra Pradesh by Porja caste women. This initially originated in the Koraput district in Odisha, but now it has kind of become an official dance of Vishakhapatnam. So Dimsa is not from Arunachal Pradesh, but instead it is from Andhra Pradesh. Then what we have is Padayani. This is not from the state of Goa, but Padayani is from the state of Kerala. So the third statement is also wrong. But when you look into Wangala, this happens to be a most popular dance form in the state of Meghalaya. So the fourth one is correctly matched. How many pairs are correctly matched? The answer to this would be one pair. Now let's look into the next practice question. With respect to enemy property, which of the following statements are correct? Enemy property is a property left behind in India by people who took Pakistani and Chinese citizenship. The law of succession applies to enemy property. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is one only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to the enemy property. Let us try and understand what are these statements. When you look into the first statement reads, enemy property is the property left behind in India by people who took Pakistani and Chinese citizenship. This statement happens to be the right statement. What are these enemy properties? Let's say for example, there was one of a person who was living in India, but then he goes on to become the Pakistan citizen or he goes on to become the Chinese citizen. In that case, all the properties that are present and owned by this particular person in India and now has become the citizen of Pakistan or China, his properties in India is what will be claimed as the enemy property. So the first statement is right. The second statement reads, law of succession applies to the enemy property. This statement is a wrong statement. What do we understand by law of succession? This basically means it is hereditary in nature. Let's say we have the grandfather followed by the father and the son. The property here is basically transferred from one generation to another. But when it comes to the enemy property, the law of succession does not apply. This basically means if a person who was once in India has taken up Pakistani citizenship or Chinese citizenship, his heirs, it can be his son, it can be his grandchildren as well, can they lay claim to this property? The answer is a clear cut no. So if a person moves away from India, seeks for Pakistan or Chinese citizenship, in that particular case, his legal heirs, it can be the son or the daughter, it can be the grandchildren, none of them can have access to this particular property. Now, if we look into the law, when war broke out in 1962 with China and 1965 and 1971 with Pakistan, the government of India took over over the properties of the citizens of China and Pakistan under the provisions of Defense of India Acts. These legislations defined an enemy as any country that committed acts of aggression against India and her citizens. Their properties were categorized as enemy properties. The properties include buildings, land, gold, jewelry, share held in the companies. As per the Tashkent Declaration signed in 1966, after the end of hostilities during 1965 war with Pakistan, both the countries were to discuss the return of properties taken over by either side during the war. This enemy property was amended in 2017. As per the amended act, enemy property refers to any property belonging to, held or managed on behalf of an enemy subject or an enemy firm. The new act ensures that the heir of the people who migrated to China and Pakistan during the partition and later on will have no claim over the properties left behind in India by their ancestors. It is this that we have to understand with respect to the enemy property. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following are the applications of RISAT 2? Monitor India's borders, track hostile ships at sea that are deemed a military threat, beneficial in mapping and managing natural disasters such as floods and landslides, take images of the earth through the thickest cloud cover in rain and in the snowy or the foggy conditions during night and day. Which of them are the applications of RISAT 2? The answer to this is 1, 2, 3 and 4. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to the RISAT. RISAT basically means it is a radar imaging satellite. This is an Indian radar imaging reconnaissance satellite and this was launched back in the year 2009. This became very important primarily because of the 2008 attack on India. So India required something of a reconnaissance satellite. So it was immediately launched by ISRO. So remember, RISAT is India's first satellite with a synthetic aperture radar which possesses 24-hour all-weathering monitoring capability. As we just discussed, all these are the applications of RISAT. So remember, it can monitor India's borders, track hostile ships at sea that are deemed as a military threat, beneficial in mapping and managing natural disasters, and take images of the earth through the thickest cloud cover as well. These are some of the applications of RISAT 2. The space agency said that RISAT 2 satellite, which weighs about 300 kg, this can also be important, made an uncontrolled re-entry in the Indian Ocean near Jakarta, and RISAT was launched by the PSLV C2L launch vehicles 13 years ago. ISRO said though the initially designed life of the satellite was for 4 years, due to proper maintenance of orbit and mission planning by the spacecraft operations team in ISRO, by economical usage of fuel, RISAT provided very useful payload data for about 13 years. Now let's look into the next practice question. Bonnalu is a traditional festival celebrated in the state of, is it Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Telangana? The answer to this is Telangana. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to the Bonnalu festival. This happens to be a traditional Hindu festival. This is celebrated in the state of Telangana and this is centered on goddess Mahakali. The festival is celebrated annually and this is of specific significance to the twin cities of Hyderabad and Secunderabad, and it is also celebrated in multiple parts of Telangana as well. The festival is basically celebrated as a note of thanksgiving to the goddess. Because the goddess has fulfilled certain oaths, it's a sign of thanksgiving to goddess Mahakali. Bonnalu involves worship of Kali in various forms such as Myasamma, Puchamma, Yellamma, Doklamma, Peddamma, Polerama, Ankalama, Marama as well as Nuklamma. It is this that we have to understand with respect to the Bonnalu festival. Now let's look into the next practice question. Gandikota Canyon of South India was created by which of the following rivers? Kaveri, Manjira, Pennar, Tungabhadra. The answer to this is Pennar. This happens to be a previous year question from the year 2022. Gandikota happens to be a small village in the Kadapa district of Andhra Pradesh, and the swift flowing rivers of River Penna cut through the granite rock cuts near the village of Gandikota, and ultimately it forms the canyon. Now let's look into the fact of the day. The fact of the day for today's discussion is Fed hikes rates. Let us try and understand what is this topic all about. We have the United States of America's central bank, which has approved another sharp rise in the interest rates. This has been raised by about 75 basis points, lifting it to the highest rate since the early 2008. The bank basically believes by pushing up the borrowing cost, it will cool the economy and bring down the price inflation. What has the US Federal Reserve said? It has said currently what we are witnessing is a supply demand imbalance which is causing the inflation. As of now, there is excessive demand, but then it is not meeting the supply. This is leading to an imbalance where there is excessive demand, but then there is no supply. This is because of multiple reasons. One is the Ukraine war, persisting growth is not happening, and at the same time, there are minimal supplies in that particular country, leading to an imbalance, creating what is called as an inflation. However, it only has the tools to control the demand side, which it is using it to bring inflation in line with its mandate of 2%. Will Fed hike nudge Reserve Bank of India? The answer is a no. Yes, Reserve Bank of India will have to monitor what exactly is happening in United States of America, but it is not the only factor. Domestic factors will also have to be taken into consideration. It's not necessary that RBI will be blindly follow the Fed and other central bank in raising the rates. RBI considers domestic factors, especially retail inflation, while reviewing the interest rates. However, higher imported inflation has added to the retail inflation in India, and RBI has already raised the repo rate by 190 basis points over the last 6 months. What will be the impact on the Indian market? Since the Federal Reserve has increased the interest rate, we will have more foreign institutional investors who will pull back their money. There might be these institutional investors who might have invested in the stock market since it is giving much better returns in the United States of America. They have increased the interest rates as well. These people who would have put their monies in the developing countries like India will now withdraw, and as a result, what we will see is fluctuations in the stock market. What should investors do? Analysts said leading indicators like credit growth, capital expenditure, and auto sales point to a robust economic recovery. As such, Indian retailers should continue with their equity investment as the economic fundamentals remain sound and will lead to outperformance in the equity asset class over the next 3 to 5 years. In equity, investors should ideally go with mutual funds. For direct investments, they should go at large cap stocks, especially in the banking, capital goods, and auto segment. This basically means that since the foreign institutional investors are withdrawing from India, the stock market will take a hit. So, where should you invest your money on? One, you should be able to invest in the mutual funds, and if there are large cap companies, invest on the large cap companies in the automobile sector, and at the same time banking, capital goods, so on and so forth. So for the next few months, what we will have is similar hit on the stock market. So we have to wait and watch and closely invest in the stock market is what the investors will have to consider, says this article. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this topic. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.